Comic like a clown, no noses, all pages. Bagging, boarding Batman in the gutter like amazing storytellers. We some fellas, we some felons in the mazes. Acapella varicella, cause the shit is so contagious. Mouse on the summaries, compiling guide the show. While the cycle spitting knowledge on the Yeti like a pro. Beat the babble, we the rabble, don't step to the squad. We get active, and haters like a cephalopod. You don't like fish talk? Do you hate a tomato? We the cuttlefish killers, tentacles on the table. Rate us 5 stars if you cherish your life. Bucky Barnes hit squad spraying lead in your pipe.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Is This Just Bad? Is This Just Bad? The best podcast you never heard of. I'm your host, Professor Mouse, joined as always by the Cosmologist himself. Oop, not gonna say that.
Nope. Nope. Yahoo.
I was gonna do a pun on his name, and I just thought that's not a good thing.
You just thought better of it. Yeah, so we usually do these when we do them. We usually do them towards the end of the show, but I think we can preemptively dole out a big old, yep, this is just bad to President Netanyahu for being a big old jerk.
I mean, it's wild over there. I mean, there's like ground forces in Gaza. They're like murdering people on the streets. It's fucking wild.
It's weird. I feel like and we actually have lived with this our entire lives, just in the background.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, this is like the interminable conflict.
Right. And, and it's so weird that because it's a conflict, of course, that, like, the U.S. and Britain invented.
Right.
By redistricting random spots of the Middle East after World War II. But ever since then, this bizarre lockstep of you can't say bad things about Israel because then that's anti-Semitic and how dare you. I'm like, those are different things.
Right. The
people and the geographical location, which is an invented location that you just made up, even more so than all geographical, state borders are made up. One world, one people, and all that. But it's...
Yeah, and
also I don't know what I was supposed to take away from the end of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but I like One World, One People a whole lot.
Yeah, but it's also rooted in a history that is so long that if you go into, if you start to even scratch the surface of, historical assessments of that region and like who it quote unquote belongs to, I mean, the rabbit hole never ends, and it's largely rooted in the fact that space geographically is a sacred space for
all sorts of people.
A series of religions, like 3 massive ones, in fact. And it's difficult to make a claim that has not already been debunked by another side of the conflict.
Disputed, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, it's just impossible.
But in this country, the U.S., for just to be clear, depending on where you're listening to this from.
In this country, Mauritius.
Yeah, right. Over here in Sokovia. What do we have to say about it? But the idea that the U.S. has just been shipping military-grade hardware to Israel forever.
Yeah.
And, massive... we just kind of shove buckets of money at them so that they can blow up Palestinians. And we're like, yeah, that's cool. That seems like a important, like, cornerstone of our policy of global cop defense that we do. Like, why? Why are we spending any money at all helping these people kill other people?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, and they're just like throttling water supplies and infrastructure, and I mean, it's like. I mean, if you go by the UN definition of genocide, and a lot of folks have characterized it as such, then that's what's happening over there.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's fucking Ramadan just ended. I mean, it just seems so callous and fucking dehumanizing and terrible, and it's also so difficult to even grasp really what's going on from news stories. I don't know if you've had that issue as well, but just trying to glean what I can from like the New York Times or whatever.
it's almost hopeless,
Yeah.
really, because I mean, I basically figure out whatever Immortal Technique is saying on Instagram and trust that.
Oh God.
Because the the New York Times and such, it's so entrenched in hand with U.S. foreign policy and whatever the White House press secretary wants you to say. And so, to the point of, there's a really good Twitter account that follows changes to headlines on, it's like the edits to the Gray Lady or something like that, and it'll show you as New York Times headlines online get edited over the course of the day to like attract more clicks or whatever. But the constant both sidesism and the constant rebuilding of whatever the headline is to make it sound like the Palestinians are an equal combatant in what is just them being slaughtered is horrific and damnable. And the complicity of most of our news outlets in being like, oh yeah, it's just too complicated and too hard to figure out who's at fault here, and everybody's to blame. And isn't it so bad that we can't come to a peaceful agreement from both sides? Like, one person has a boot on their neck, and the other one's wearing that boot.
Right.
That's not an equal conflict.
Yeah, there's all this like propaganda coming out, and I mean relevant to this show. Wonder
Gal
Woman.
Gadot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She posted something about like my heart is breaking for and asking for peace and shit like that, and it is like that kind of propaganda that's been inculcated of there are two equally powerful, equally resourced sides engaged in an equal and even civil war, where it's like, well, that's not what's happening. Like, there are people who are being exploited. There are people who are being led to premature death on a daily basis by another group of people. And that's the group that you fought for, Wonder Woman. Like, so what are you talking about? And
yeah, the hand-wringing of, oh, it's just so terrible that we're sitting on the sidelines and watching these two groups slug it out. It's like, no. We're sending like $8 billion of tanks and fighter jets and guns to one side and then denying the self-determination statehood of the other side. So we're not just sitting on the sidelines watching. We're actively making it worse.
Yeah, and the idea of being characterized as like a civil war, I guess language only takes you so far, but it's like in the American Civil War, you had two equally large land masses with two sort of equal populations, equally resourceful kind of people going to war with one another. That was a civil war. There was some parity in that. That's not what's happening over there, but that's what's being reported. And so that's like shifting and sort of characterizing the narrative in a really specific way that's happening on all these like media outlets and shit like that, where they're not reporting on like decades long, centuries, like the long sort of antagonism that's existed over there, and like frankly the just lack of power and resources that one group has over another. I mean, it's fucking crazy.
Yeah. Yup. But yeah, we just got done talking not too long ago about Wonder Woman 1984 and the ridiculous both, posturing and propaganda of her saving little brown kids from oncoming vehicles when in real life she would have been driving those vehicles straight over the bodies of those little brown kids. And then the villain, one of the villains, making a wish to get all of his ancestral borders back. It's just like massively tone deaf.
Yeah, and like just pure propaganda. I mean, I would imagine that Gal Gadot has a lot to do with the creative decision making that goes along with those films, and that, I mean, bears out in all of the public statements that she's made recently. I mean, because this is like geopolitical, like this is a a massive fucking debacle that like everybody's looking at right now. And I don't know. I mean, maybe Hollywood stars shouldn't talk about shit. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe. She's so unique, though, because she's an apparatus of a foreign army, in addition to being, like, an entertainment star. And, like, that matters.
Yeah, George Clooney never fought for, like, I don't know. He was never in the CIA or anything.
Right, as far as we know.
As far as we know.
It's funny because there was a whole generation, of course, where everybody had been a soldier before coming to Hollywood. And, you know, in the 40s, basically. And one of the last remnants of that is a great story about Christopher Lee, who was first pretty clearly the actual inspiration for James Bond. Like, Ian Fleming knew Christopher Lee personally, and wrote a bunch of stuff that it seems to have been sort of partially fictionalized accounts of Christopher Lee's real life.
Yeah.
But there's a story about him on the set of Lord of the Rings when he, spoilers for Lord of the Rings, I guess.
The book and the film.
And the film, right. Where Peter Jackson's trying to figure out how to choreograph his death as Saruman. And he gets, at the end of the Two Towers, he gets stabbed in the back when he's on his tower. And Peter Jackson's trying to give him directions. And Christopher Lee takes him aside and goes, "No, that's not how it sounds when somebody gets stabbed in the back. This is what it sounds like. You get all of the wind knocked out of you, and there's sort of like a gasping sound when you stab someone in the back." And then he goes off and he does it, and it's very convincing, and he says something vague about some, like, dark shit in World War II that he did, and wouldn't go into details, but he knows what that sounds like.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's in many ways, like, good for him for being able to take that life experience to make his performance more authentic. But it's interesting to see the difference between Christopher Lee especially, who, while Tolkien would never admit to it in public, the Lord of the Rings books are, of course, an analogy for the World War I specifically, but the rise of mechanization in warfare and the sort of death of individual bravery. And
they're not. He didn't believe in analogies.
Right. Yeah.
It was about orcs and little hobbits and wizards, dude.
Yeah. Then, not taken from his experience in any capacity. Total fantasy. He's such a weird dude because, like, he hated anybody trying to draw analogies in his work. Whereas C.S. Lewis was, like, if people do not understand that the lion is Jesus, I will kill myself. I have to make that as clear as possible.
His name is Jesus. No. He should have just named the characters after what they represented.
Yeah. But so those stories are very much anti-war. And, Christopher Lee had been through real conflict and is, in an anti-war story as the big bad and, does a wonderful job. And you've got somebody like Gal Gadot, who has so much more control over her own image and, like, has a lot of power, and with great power comes great responsibility, and just chooses to use that power in the most self-aggrandizing and, like, least constructive way possible.
Yeah. And it never works out the way that she wants it to. I mean, when she released that Imagine video, it was like so tone deaf, and like this tweet. I mean, she's getting props from like Ted Cruz and shit like that, and people she probably doesn't want to be associated with.
Yeah. Oh, did you see the fall of the Yang Gang? Talking about this as well. So Andrew Yang is also getting props from like Stephen Miller and Ted Cruz for coming out in support of Israel against Palestine, and then tried to do a bunch of damage control of both sidesism. But, he's a technocrat. Of course he'd be pro dictatorial army shit.
Yeah, I don't know how to feel about Yang in any capacity. I mean, I don't think he has values.
I think that's the thing, is that I don't think he has That's right. As a venture capitalist or whatever the fuck he is, the sort of defining characteristic of people like that is they are entirely amoral. And so, he'll go whichever way the profits and like the Bitcoin blows or whatever, wherever he can crunch the most blockchain. I don't know what the fuck he does, but
because he's like talking about universal basic income and on like the Joe Rogan podcast. I mean, just that in and of itself is a contradiction. And then being the one person on the stage that's sort of like pushing the conversation more leftward, but without a prayer of winning anything. And now he's in a position where he's running for an office that he might actually win. And so now
he's trying to just say whatever he thinks is going to get him in with the people that matter to him with the political influence. Like this is exactly the story of Elon Musk too. Of he comes out looking progressive and free thinking and like fresh and new and interesting, and then slowly reveals himself to be just another corporate asshole.
Right.
And that's because unless you're going to be truly revolutionary in your politics, if your self-advancement is tied to capitalism,
yeah,
at the end of the day, you're always going to end up aligning with the other capitalists, right? So, you got Elon Musk trying to be all, cool and innovative or whatever he wants you to believe, but then what his actual MO is indentured servitude on Mars. Like the same old school colonial tactics of his family that owned a diamond mine. Like that shit doesn't change as long as you're still stuck in trying to make money, I think. The only way to...
He's so crazy. Andrew Yang is running for mayor of New York City, and have you followed that at all?
No, I've only just seen him getting torched for saying stupid things about Israel, so I wasn't even realized I didn't know until just now that he was running for anything specifically. So what's been going on with him?
He's running for mayor of New York City, and he's like the clear front runner because he has a lot of money, and like nobody wants, well, like progressive publications like Teen Vogue, which I actually really like.
Teen Vogue is legit, yeah.
or like his policies are all fucked up. But he also, I'm trying to figure out let me just figure out where the fuck he's from. Maybe he is from New York, but it doesn't feel like he's from New York because
he feels like he's from Silicon Valley, but I don't know if that's true.
Well, he was born in Schenectady, which is technically in New York, but not really. He grew up in Westchester County, New York, so he grew up in like the suburbs,
the rich suburbs.
Yeah, the rich suburbs. So there's just a video of him walking in a grocery store, calling it a bodega, just like misidentifying what a bodega is.
That's really funny.
And yeah, just totally out of touch, but has more money than God, and so is like leading there. And the current mayor, Bill de Blasio, everybody fucking hates him, and nobody fucks with Andrew Cuomo, and so people in New York, I guess, are looking to shake things up with their political leadership because it was so bad during the pandemic. But I mean, I guess Yang is going to be the mayor of New York City. I don't know. That
sucks.
This is his quest to take the White House in 2024 or 2028 or whatever the fuck.
I love the idea of universal basic income. What scares me is when you get a technocrat who sees, like, there are two potential ends to automation of, if robots take our jobs. And if it becomes a dystopia of everybody's out of work and because they've been automated out of it, that's terrible. And if it's a universal basic income, things get automated, people get to like make art and do what they actually care about and aren't stuck in wage slavery because robots can do that work for us. That's awesome. That's utopian. But I just don't know what side he falls on. I can't pin him down. And that scares me.
Yeah, he doesn't have any real policies. But that is in the Teen Vogue article that that was identified as the thing that made him popular amongst progressives originally was that when he was running for president, he did support UBI, but it's not. It's incoherent. He's talked about
Yeah, and
labor
his
unions
UBI
in the
was
past.
bullshit.
Yeah,
Right, like it was just like $1,000, but then that everybody just raises their rent by $1,000 and takes it from you. Like there was no follow up beyond pump additional money into a broken system.
Yeah. So that's crazy. I did want to return to talk about Christopher Lee real quick because I feel like we should probably talk about him more on the show because he played Dracula in the 50s and he played the fucking mummy in the 50s. Like he was
Yeah, I did not know that he was a mummy.
he was the mummy in the movie The Mummy. And I feel like we should watch this movie.
I think we absolutely should. Yeah, there's this whole like lost to us era of B-movie horror. Because like the 30s horror, we are of course all familiar with. You know, you got your Bela Lugosi, you got your Boris Karloff, but those were all, like you said, rebooted with Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee in the 50s, and then by the time we became sort of aware of film and were born and watching movies, those movies had not yet become easy to access online, but they also weren't really good enough to be worth accessing, and the only person who really cared about them was George Lucas. and so he ended up pulling Christopher Lee into all of his stuff.
Well, I'll tell you this. I disagree with you only insofar as that's all I've been watching.
Oh, really?
Or B-movie.
So you found them now.
Or horror B-movies from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, primarily directed by Italians. So there was the godfather of sort of like Italian cinema was this guy, Mario Bava, who directed this movie called Black Sunday, which at the time, I mean, it's called The Mask of Satan. And that's the literal translation from Italian, but they wanted to release it in the States, so they renamed it Black Sunday. And the movie begins in this like field, this graveyard, and this woman is being executed for being a witch. And so there's this like executioner, like early BDSM imagery, pulls out this mask that has a bunch of spikes on the inside of the mask, puts the mask over the woman's face, takes a sledgehammer, smashes the mask into her face, and blood comes out. Just like,
wow.
Just gushing blood. And I was reading in the Wikipedia that part of its like legacy is that, Hitchcock was making really shocking, startling films, but as you know, from like breaking down Psycho or watching the 24-hour Psycho or whatever, it was all implied violence. Like there was a sense of thrilling suspense in Hitchcock movies, but in Europe they were doing like gore in the 60s. And Mario Bava was like this massive sort of influence, and he cast Christopher Lee in a movie in 1963 called The Whip and the Potty, which is also like, they are dated insofar as when you watch them. I don't think that, because you get squeamish watching like zombie shit, you would be totally fine watching this shit. It's like so tame by the standards of the 70s and the 80s when they really figure out prosthetics, when they're able to like break somebody's like ankle and show it to you, or whenever they're able to make people's like bones come out of their bodies and shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's because of that, what you mentioned being rectified, which is them, I guess it was Amazon, I'm not sure what it is a subsidiary of, but there's a streaming service called Shudder that is like purely horror based. And so you go on there and you find Mario Bava films. You find like a whole collection of movies that they have of his up there. And I've watched a few of those. I watched a ton of Lucio Fulci movies. There's this movie called The Beyond, which is like a surprise zombie movie where you don't realize it's a zombie movie until the very end. And the thing about these movies that is so fascinating is that they're made by Italians, Italian crew, Italian actors, Italian directors, Italian writers, Italian everything. Sometimes there will be an American actor here or there, but the dialogue is shot and the movie is shot in Italian. But that print doesn't exist because the way that the movie is released is purely dubbed in English because they're trying to sell them to American audiences. This is the spaghetti western thing,
Right.
where they're like, we feel like we can do this better than, well, a couple of things.
We have fewer restrictions and are not a subtle people by nature, so we'll just
That's definitely part of it. Like the legacy of Italian filmmaking, you really see it. Like, I mean, just Italian neorealism and like the sort of grittiness of that type of cinema, and you take that sort of art house and apply it to like horror. It's like there's nothing left to be desired. There's no implication. We're just going to show you what's happening.
There's no suspense. There's no like, you know, the shock and horror of what you're not seeing or what you're imagining. It's just like, we're gonna smash this woman's face into a sledgehammer on screen.
Yeah, and you're
Show
gonna,
it to you.
and you're gonna see it, and it's gonna be fucking gross. So it was partially that. Also, the Italian sort of film market is not huge, and there's this burgeoning market for horror films in the United States, and so it's funny because of that sort of like cohort of people. I think my favorite director is Lucio Fulci, who he did The Beyond. He did a movie called The Black Cat, where it's based on the Edgar Allan Poe poem.
Oh,
but,
cool.
But it is literally follows a cat as it murders a bunch of people. And so it's like that level of fucking ridiculousness. He also did a movie called The Four of the Apocalypse, which is about four people who are navigating it's like bandits and robbers and shit in the Old West. And again, these are all like Italians, and it's all dubbed in English. And yeah, they're like, we could do this. We could appeal to American audiences, and there's a market for it in the United States. So we're not even really gonna fucks with distribution in Italy. And so Lucio Fulci, towards the end of his life, like comes to the United States, and they're obsessed with him. And he's like, I had no idea. I
was just shipping these off, and I never knew if anybody watched them.
Yeah, people loved him. He did. It's so funny because I know of two films like this. So he did a movie called Zombie 2, and there is
what
no
a title.
There is no Zombie 1. Zombie 1 is Night of the Living Dead. So what they would do is there would be a popular movie, like a popular genre film in the U.S. that people love in Italy and love in the United States. And so what they would do is they would just make a sequel to it, not ask anybody's permission.
So Italian. Yeah. When I was living there, God, they did this stuff all the time. Fumetti, which is their comics, just filled with unauthorized, unofficial sequels and, Arachno Uomo, Spider-Man stuff, just constantly. No respect and you see this same kind of aesthetic in like lucha in Mexico, where you've got like 4 different active teams who all have like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles gimmick simultaneously, just because it's popular.
Yeah.
They don't give a fuck. It's great.
It's so good.
So anyway, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, but like the movies are, I think what ends up getting lost mostly is, and I guess we kind of talk a lot of shit about Tarantino for a number of reasons. He's definitely hateable. But what's great about him is that he has a penchant for finding like international releases or releases from history, because he has this encyclopedic knowledge. And so somehow through him, I was introduced, maybe it was a reference in Inglourious Bastards or something like that, through a lot of these directors, and was sort of just able to look them up. And he was a huge fan of Lucio Fulci, and The Beyond is one of his favorite films. And I watched that movie and I was like scared. And I don't really get scared watching horror movies anymore because they are so formulaic. So when you come upon a movie like that original, it's so refreshing to see that, where it's like, you know all the tricks in the book. There's nothing new under the sun. But then you watch a movie from the fucking 80s and you're like, I'm terrified. My wife was out, right? And so I was like, hey, just, text me when you get back. Because I'm watching this movie. It's scaring the shit out of me. And I don't want to be surprised. But then so they do.
So tell me about Zombie 2.
So Zombie 2, I mean, I watched this one in high school. I would rewatch this. But it has nothing to do with anything that is present in Night of the Living Dead. It takes place on a remote island. A group of researchers go over there. It's fucking disgusting. He is renowned as like the king of gore, the godfather of gore, which he shares that title with somebody else sort of unofficially. And it's just fucking gross. Like the melting bodies, the corrosive skin, the bleeding, dead, like it's disgusting. And there's a lot of fire in that one as well. They burn a lot of shit down. And the great thing about these films is that since there's low budget, usually the whole movie takes place in like one set. And they don't leave the set. And they probably shoot it sequentially because most of the time the set's burned down. That's like the end of the movie. It's just everything exploding. So you can see them like doing these things in 20 days, like sequentially based on the script. Because it's like, we're going to destroy this fucking whole thing that we set up for $15. Like, so we need to really
get all our shots
in. And it's also funny because like there's one guy named Michel Suavi who is he's an actor that you see in a bunch of movies, and he directed a movie in the 90s called Cemetery Man, which Marty Scorsese loves. It was like, this was like the best Italian movie of the 90s. But Michel Suavi, I know him because he is the killer in A Blade in the Dark. He is the man wearing like half a metal mask in this movie called Demons, which I just watched, which was directed by Lamberto Bava, Mario Bava's son. And he was also second director, like the second assistant director on those movies as well. And so it's just like there's like 12 people involved in making these fucking movies. It's crazy. And they're all acting in it and directing and fucking writing, and they just pumped out all of these fucking movies, and they're all up on Shudder. And it's been fun going back and watching these. The movie Demons was so fun. It takes place in a movie theater. So cool. Michel Suavi has this fucking metal mask, half a metal face on, and he's handing out flyers, complimentary tickets to a movie theater. It doesn't say what or why or who or anything else, but just like, come here at this time. And this woman that he's that is like running away from him because she thinks that he is like stalking her, takes it and is like, oh, cool. and the tone, because of the dubbing, does shift that radically, where it's like a language unto itself. It's not really English they speak in these fucking movies. It's something completely different. And so, they go there, and then there's a bunch of people, and then you set them up, and you're like, oh, so this guy's here with these people. These two are on a date. This is an older couple. The guy's blind, and the woman's cheating on him right next to him in the seat. And they go to watch a movie, and the movie like plays for like 15 minutes. So you watch another movie with the people in the movie theater as they're watching it. And as they're watching it, one of the people had nicked herself on a metal mask that was part of a display that was at the front of the theater, and becomes a zombie. And so then the movie becomes what all of these movies essentially are, which is like contrivances to get to the next transformation. So what's the next transformation going to be? Well, these people are going to be kissing, and she's going to tie piano wire around both of their necks and fucking decapitate them, which is an awesome kill. Or this one is going to find somebody in the bathroom. They're going to be looking away. They're going to turn around. They're going to vomit all over themselves and then kill them. Or this person's going to get hanged. They are going to set up a base camp at the top. So there's the mezzanine level, and they go up to the balcony. They set up a base camp, and they cordon everything off. And then the zombies break up through the middle, and so unwittingly they have actually trapped themselves in there with zombies.
Yeah.
And the movie ends with a guy and the woman from the beginning. The guy finds a sword, samurai sword, that he kills his best friend with, and then he jumps on a motorcycle, and on this motorcycle starts driving through the crowd, cutting all the zombies' heads off with his like shirt half open and his fucking pecs glistening and shit. It's just like
Wow.
the best movie I've ever seen. It's so dumb. And the guy who wrote it is fucking Dario Argento, who did Suspiria, like a fucking straight up a legendary Italian filmmaker who accidentally got famous in the art house community, but was like truly making movies with his crazy fucking bros for his entire life.
Wild.
Yeah, I mean, I would say we should watch some of these, but it's just like not for you. Like, this is the genre of film
I'm not
that
gonna be able to handle it.
Yeah, you would vomit probably.
Probably, and then turn into a zombie. Wow, I was thinking about this actually, and sort of the theme, gore for the sake of gore, basically. I was thinking about this in relationship to Invincible. So Invincible, of course, yeah. So this is based on Robert Kirkman's comic book, and Kirkman, who you would also know, dear listener, as the creator of The Walking Dead.
Yes.
And so what's really interesting to watch partially here is how the superheroes on film are charting basically the same course as superheroes in books. So it's kind of like watching the U.S. industrialize and watching China industrialize along the same lines, just much faster.
Right.
So you get all of the baseline superhero stories, and then we saturate the market with those, and what comes next is the like re-examinations or inversions of superhero tropes. And so that after that happened in the books, because they're all being adapted, they're being adapted in kind of roughly the same order, which is really interesting because you get your baseline Superman, your Batman, your Captain America, your DC Marvel, and then streamers and production houses start trying to, either scrape, depending on how you want to look at it, either scrape the bottom of the barrel or widen their horizons to look for other things. And then you get The Boys and you get Invincible, which were, when they were written on purpose as examinations, critiques, inversions of the genre. Mm-hmm. And I think that's great in theory. I love that there's more space for this kind of stuff. I of course, we overanalyze everything. I think a good re-examination of a genre or playing with tropes is great. My issue is Kirkman specifically. I have always found to be sort of a purveyor of torture porn.
Oh, interesting.
The dude is obsessed in his writing with making things as bleak and brutal and depressing as possible. Like, his whole mission statement for The Walking Dead was truly, how long can I keep a zombie story going for? I mean, that book ran for hundreds of issues, and that was the point, was just like continuing to drag on this super depressing story. Yeah. And that in and of itself is an interesting thought experiment. And it has, does it have artistic merit? Maybe. It's not for me, personally. And when it's zombies, certainly. When it's superheroes, it's not for me in a different way, which is, because I was trying to figure out, like, why don't I want, I read a summary of Invincible, the book. I was kind of Wikipediaing my heart out here because I couldn't bring myself to watch the show. And partially it's because a good reference point, I don't know if you ended up watching this. Did you watch the Harley Quinn cartoon? that came out recently?
Just like a couple episodes, maybe the
Okay.
first two.
Yeah, so that would have been enough to see. It's like very, very violent,
Yeah.
like insanely violent, and that level of violence is a lot for me. I have trouble with it. But what makes Harley Quinn different is it's played for sort of over the top insane comedy, and then it's got like queer romance and clever satire and so like I can stomach the violence when it recognizes how ridiculous it is. The issue with Kirkman is that, for lack of a better word, he just doesn't have a sense of humor. And so it's the same level of violence in something like Invincible, but it's played completely serious and completely bleak. And that, to me, isn't necessary, I suppose.
Right.
It's this idea of like, everybody has the thought of, well, what if Superman were evil? And, what if Superman used all of his incredible strength to, like, rip Batman in half? And, like, okay, everybody's had that thought experiment. I personally don't feel like I need to see that.
Yeah, who cares?
Like, who cares? And, like, The Boys, which I also haven't watched yet, but, maybe mustering up the strength to, that's got satire. That's, it's designed to be funny, sort of, or like clever in some ways.
It's ludicrous. It's like absurd.
Yeah, it's absurd, right? The violence in Invincible is absurd, but it's not supposed to be funny. It's supposed to be like, look how dark this is. Look how serious we're being. And the problem with the storytelling, it doubles down on the essentially libertarian nature that superheroes can fall into, which is taking the law into your own hands, making unilateral decisions without other people's input, having the power of life and death because you're the one with the power. And he creates characters whose only purpose is to die. Like there's a woman whose power is she can duplicate herself a bunch of times. Well, why would you even write a character who is a woman who can duplicate herself a bunch of times unless you were going to use that as an excuse to graphically murder her a bunch of times?
Right.
And I don't know, dude. It's like what was interesting to listening, what made me think of it was we kind of did this in the 60s already. The Italians were masters of this. There's only so many times I can see, even if it's a superpowered sledgehammer, it's still a sledgehammer into somebody's face. So people really love Invincible right now, and my take on it is simply there is a misunderstanding sometimes of it is brutal and dark and shocking, therefore it must be good.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure though, because did you see the backlash to the Lena Waithe show, Them?
Ooh, yeah, that's a really good counterpoint or corollary. I was reading about this and the fact they called it Them after Jordan Peele's Us, I thought was interesting.
It's so terrible. I don't know what the timeline is for it, but it has Lovecraft Country tones, Us tones. Lovecraft Country already came out and finished, and Us is literally called Us, and this show is called Them. I don't believe, the optimist in me does not believe it's that cravenly, like taking from these very successful properties already and just repackaging them and making it much more viscerally violent to the point where people are like, yeah, I don't need this. I don't need to see mass spectacles of Black Death. Good on that. But that was like the critique, was that it didn't serve a purpose beyond, within the context of the show, beyond terrifying people. And I have not done my due diligence because I haven't watched the show, but frankly I don't want to, based on all the reviews.
No, that's what I read too, because I saw an ad for it and like, ooh, I like Lovecraft Country. Let me look into this, and like it's a period piece, it's got cool costumes, and then I read about like, oh, this is they're just raping and murdering black people.
Yeah,
and I don't need that.
And it gets even like, I read about some of the scenes in the show that made me, somebody who loves fucking weird gothic Italian horror movies, so be like, and I can't stomach that. But to the point on Robert Kirkman, I do think it's interesting that you know, to compare it to these sorts of the zombie movies of the 80s, and one of the reasons why I didn't really love The Walking Dead, or I didn't love the renewed interest in zombies, hashtag release the Snyder Cut. Of that fucking Army of the Dead movie looks like a pile of dog shit. But the reason that I don't really give a shit about them is because the types of zombie stories that really interested me and really intrigued me were either George Romero's sort of morality tales that created not just a sort of foundation for the modern zombie genre, but also embedded it in a sort of a critique of anti-blackness or a critique of materialism and consumerism. And then when it's taken up in the 70s and the 80s, when grindhouse cinemas are playing these sort of double features, you know, with these bizarre Italian horror films, what they're doing is something that to me resembles a very high level of craftsmanship. And so far as they're forwarding the grammar and the potentialities of cinema by creating these spectacles of death. And so
this is like James Cameron at this point, like experimenting with new technology.
Yeah, and the technology is primarily prosthetics, and they're doing so much work with prosthetics to create realistic looking gore. And to me, there's an artistry in that. But by the time there's zombie movies in the 21st century, it's like, or zombie shows, it's like, well, so what is this? What is this doing for us? Because we've already seen it. We've already seen how gross this shit can be, and we already understand the critiques. So
Of the morality, yeah.
What's the thing that you're bringing to this? And I remember watching the first season of The Walking Dead, which by all accounts is the best season of The Walking Dead.
It's good. Yeah.
But also being like, this doesn't matter. This is not doing anything new that I haven't seen. And frankly, the action is less interesting than it was in, you know, the heyday of the zombie movie, when there were people who were trying to really forward the genre. It's like waxing poetic on human nature and shit like that, but who cares? Like,
But Romero's done that too. That's how I feel about Invincible, where, like, we've already litigated the what if Superman were evil thing so many times. And we've already also done the let's watch superpowers brought to their bloodiest extreme so many times. And so Kirkman has taken those two things and shoved them together, but it's kind of warmed over and reheated, and like I don't care truly about either of those things in that package unless it's something like Harley Quinn, where, well, it's got like progressive queer Jewish humor in it. Like, well, that's new. I'll watch that.
Yeah, the new stories need to be new, and they don't feel new. Like even in the Millarverse, like the Secret Service comic, and then the Kingsman series is like, I mean, it just rings a little hollow. I mean, I like the first movie, and then the second movie sucked.
The second movie's bonkers.
Yeah.
And this has been the case with Jupiter's Legacy also, which is it's come out sort of too late. It doesn't have anything new to say because we've seen so many versions of this. You know, the passing of the Guard, and the boomer superheroes don't want to be extremists, and the millennial superheroes are too extreme, and it can't take a side one way or the other. And so it's stuck in the middle, trying to be kind of wishy-washy about don't kill, but also don't make anything better.
Right.
And yeah.
And you can do new shit. You can do new shit.
You can.
And people have
but
done
it's
new
hard.
Shit. Yeah.
It's hard, so here's, I think, the perfect kind of way to put a button on this is the trailer for the next Venom movie just came out.
I haven't seen it yet. I wanted to wait for whatever reason.
I've waited like a year. This was supposed to come out pre-pandemic. or I guess it was supposed to come out like right when the pandemic started, and they pushed it and kept pushing it and kept pushing it. So now the new release date is September of 2021, and I am thrilled.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. We've talked about Venom before, and we'll do it again. And Venom is, I was thinking about this recently. If Venom is my favorite non-MCU superhero movie, unironically, it truly is.
Yeah.
Because it's so different. And I mean, of course, The Winter Soldier is my favorite MCU superhero movie because it's so different, because it's a gothic ghost story, basically, and a spy thriller. But Venom is a perfect example of just going balls to the wall and trying something new. And Venom, of course, is in and of itself this kind of worst impulses of the late 80s, early 90s comic book world of extreme violence. And so to try to bring that to screen, you're kind of, on paper, that sounds dumb as shit.
Right.
But on screen, it does actually everything we've just talked about, which is Venom is visually a really interesting character. Visually, in comics, they did stuff with Venom that they'd never done before, with just like the way he moves, all of the like tentacles and the pseudopods and whatever. And so bringing that to life on screen is, in fact, a sort of next step in technology. Is visual interest, new fight choreography, new staging, new stunts that you get to explore with a character like Venom that you wouldn't have an opportunity to do with really any other character in Western media. Like, there's nothing else outside of hentai, basically, that moves like that.
Yeah.
So that's cool on screen. And that hits one of our buckets, which is it doing something new and interesting with a filmic form? Yeah, it sure is. Then the next question is, okay, but is it going to do something interesting narratively? And, of course, the trailers for that first film were dark and boring and unremarkable, and everybody, because they didn't know how to pitch it. Because they were afraid or didn't understand that the movie that they had on their hands was a screwball comedy. And so you take weird, tentacly fight choreography and you marry it in a symbiotic relationship to a, like, old-school Cary Grant screwball comedy movie, and suddenly you have something that fulfills both of our requirements for a truly new and innovative thing. And it's just like, because Sony was desperate, basically, they allowed these people to make a weird fucking movie, and it was great. So here's what's so interesting about the trailer for the second one. So they've got Andy Serkis directing, and we know, of course, that Andy Serkis is, one, a genius when it comes to motion capture and sort of digital puppetry and movement. So, great choice. And two, a real weirdo. They make him weird out there in whatever outback in Australia he comes from.
He's arguably also a bad director.
Yeah, what else has he directed? Didn't he do one of the monkey movies?
Yeah, he did Mowgli, Legend of the Jungle, which was not good. It was like the live action whatever. And he did a movie called Breathe, which I never saw but didn't get great reviews. But this is his second big project, the first being Mowgli, which was not great.
Okay, so fair enough. I think it's an interesting choice to bring him in because the movie is going to be so heavily CGI choreography focused. Like, bringing him in as kind of a choreographer as much as a director is interesting. Because, frankly, what we learned from the first film and what is apparent from the second one is Tom Hardy's just kind of doing his own thing. Like, you can't direct that man. He's a maniac.
Well, but I will say that, so the person who directed it was Ruben Fleischer, who managed to capture that absurdity in Zombieland, which is also probably why Woody Harrelson signed up to be Carnage. And I believe the reason that he was not able to do it was because he was filming Uncharted. He's still an executive producer on the Venom sequel, but yeah, I don't know. I think Ruben Fleischer, you've seen Zombieland, right?
Yes, I have, and it's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's goofy.
It's that kind of tone. I think that's kind of his bread and butter is like, well, let's put all of this comedy within the context of dire circumstances. And that's kind of what really worked in Venom. That's the only reason I think trepidation about the film is because Andy Serkis has not proven himself. But if he does, it'll be great.
That's a fair point. So to finish up on this, then Tom Hardy has a story credit on the second film.
That's cool.
Which is cool and what's really interesting about the comparison between the trailers for the first film, which were totally unremarkable, and like I almost didn't go to see it. And I really almost didn't, and I only did because queer monster fucker Tumblr started talking about the movie. Of like, wait, this is actually really good. I'm like, well, okay, I guess I'll give it a shot. The second trailers, however, are doubling down on the screwball. Like, it opens with a scene of Eddie Brock and Venom trying to make breakfast together, like Odd Couple style. They are very, very aware of what worked in the first film, and they are trying really hard to lean into it, which is cool. I think it's a good idea. And it's also got Woody Harrelson being a real creep, which he's great at. And there's a really interesting dynamic about, thinking about symbiotes, of just as Eddie and Venom have this parallel of kind of being losers that need each other. And as we know, of course, Cletus Cassidy will get the Carnage symbiote. But Cletus and Eddie have a connection where Cletus has this kind of fawning obsession with Eddie and will only talk to him, and Eddie's reporting on him. And so the setup is the Daily Bugle West Coast edition or the police department or whoever have to encourage Eddie, kind of Hannibal and Will Graham style, to foster a relationship with Cletus Cassidy to learn more about his various serial killing victims to find the bodies. So it's an interesting setup. It creates this kind of, frankly, homoerotic tension that is valuable for a movie like this. It seems wonderful and truly weird, which is kind of what we're looking for now. I mean, the problem with Jupiter's Legacy, the problem with Invincible, the problem with some of the other superhero shows, the interminable CW stuff sometimes, is it can't go anywhere new. It'll double down on a specific aspect of something we've already seen, but it's afraid to break, like, let's be more violent, or let's be more brooding, but, with the very few people are willing to be like, let's be more goofy, or let's be more gay, or let's be, just more bizarre. And I think when we finally crack that seal, and we're able to consistently make Doom Patrol level, like, let's just adapt all of Grant Morrison's weirdest shit, that's when we'll hit I think, the next round of kind of breathing life into these superhero shows. Yeah.
I mean, I'm excited. I liked, obviously, the first movie. I saw that one by myself at a movie theater in New Jersey.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and it was fun. Totally empty. I remember it being like, oh, is this movie gonna bomb? And I think it didn't bomb because it did well overseas.
And there were like people went and watched it multiple times. Like the early weekends were not good, but they ended up it had like where it got word of mouth, and it actually stayed in theaters for a really long time.
Right, which I mean, hopefully by September. Although I have no idea. I don't know what's going on anymore.
Yeah, it's funny. I was reading, like, CDC just said, yeah, if you've been vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask anymore. But then at the same time, Fauci is like, yeah, we said that to encourage more people to get vaccinated. Like, if they, like a carrot and a stick thing of like, well, if we tell them you don't have to wear a mask anymore if you get vaccinated, maybe people will get vaccinated. I'm like, well, I think I might just keep wearing a mask while I'm on the metro.
Yeah. So
I don't know.
So the gross in the U.S. was $213 million, which is fine.
Not great.
It's fine, but it made $850 $50 million, and it was all foreign.
Nice.
The international market latched onto it. China, it grossed $270 million, and it opened to $107 million, which is wild. So yeah, they loved it over there, and I think that's also kind of because of how bizarre it is. I mean, it is a bizarre concept, but
Well, and that kind of CGI, all of like you look at any of the Chinese stuff that makes its way to Netflix, they are very comfortable with bonkers CGI in their movies.
yeah, and so am I. I wish
Yeah.
I wish we were more like Godzilla Kong level CGI, because that CGI, as we said, sucks, but it doesn't matter. It's almost worse when it's in a superhero movie, like the CGI goop fest at the end of all these movies, where it's like you could tell it's supposed to be good, but like Thanos' face looks like spam.
Yeah,
And it just-
because it's been like practical effects and realism for 3/4 of the movie, and like, okay, time to pull out all the stops. And like, but you didn't pay your VFX artists enough. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's also very funny too when VFX like nerds go and find all the mistakes that they made in those movies, where it's just like Thanos' hand is sneaking out of the glove in this frame. It's like, oh god.
Just clipping out of the frames. Yeah, it's like if they can find that, that means you all, were too busy paying RDJ $50 million and couldn't staff another 20 people in your VFX booth to do edits.
Yeah, but the cast is also great in Venom. So you got Tom Hardy, you have Woody Harrelson, you have Michelle Williams, and they were all three in the first movie. You had Naomi Harris, who's great.
Yeah, she's gonna be great.
You Reed Scott, and you have Stephen Graham. I love Stephen Graham, and if you don't know who Stephen Graham is, he's fucking British, but plays a fantastic Al Capone in Boardwalk Empire.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, I just started watching Boardwalk Empire right after The Sopranos. There was like a legacy of television that emerged out of The Sopranos.
Mm-hmm.
Terrence Winter, Matthew Weiner, Tim Van Patten, like a bunch of people who are now sort of TV all-stars. And so after Sopranos ends, Terrence Winter reads a book, which is a straight-up history book, called Boardwalk Empire, which is about prohibition and the sort of political machinery and bossism of Atlantic City in the 1920s. And it's based on this guy named Nucky Johnson.
Is Dustin Hoffman in this one?
No, this is Steve Buscemi.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Steve Buscemi it plays the lead, Nucky Thompson. Steve Buscemi was in The Sopranos first season. He also directed an episode of The Sopranos, and so he knew Terrence Winter and all those guys. Interestingly, Jim Gandolfini, who obviously played Tony Soprano, they were considering him maybe to play Nucky Thompson, but it was all about like what they wanted to capture. If they wanted to capture what the guy in real life was like, they probably would have cast James Gandolfini, but they wanted to do something different because they were so self-conscious, I think, about the fact that it is like, this is the next thing after Sopranos, and
We can't cast the same guy.
Exactly, yeah, and we're all from The Sopranos, like Terrence Winter, Stephen Levinson, fucking Tim Van Patten, like all these people were from The Sopranos. They cast a bunch of people from The Sopranos in supporting roles and in the lead, like so. They were like, let's try to figure something out. So the guy. So in the very beginning. So this is 1920 on the dot. The first season takes place around the election of Warren Harding.
That's cool.
This is all like history. I can't even believe they gave this show the full run that they asked for, because
Yeah, you put Warren Harding on screen, and you're like, yeah, this is gonna be great.
yeah, but they're like people like
Riveting.
a massive characters like fucking Harry Doherty, who was the attorney general for Warren Harding, like, and his campaign manager, like within the context of like history, Nucky Johnson, or Nucky Thompson as he's called in the show, is like not a real big mover and shaker. But that was also the thing that they did in The Sopranos, where they were like, let's do a mob show, but let's make it the shitty mob. So it's not any of the five families from New York City. It's the mob from North Jersey, and they're kind of like they suck at it. So yeah, the show is fantastic, and Stephen Graham is introduced in the first, I believe he's in the pilot, as Al. It's so cool how they just integrate him seamlessly into it, where he meets a character that is sort of like, you know, the son, but you know, the son to Steve Buscemi's character, but not his biological son. It's like somebody's taken under his wing, and he decides to pull a job with this guy Al from Brooklyn, who's coming in from Chicago, and they to host this elaborate thing. They end up fucking over Nucky Thompson, and that's kind of how the series starts. And so periodically you check back in with Stephen Graham playing Al Pacino in Chicago, and him
Al Capone, not Al Pacino.
Sorry, Al Capone. Al Capone in Chicago. And it's crazy because he's like a guy. He's an English guy who's playing a guy from Brooklyn who's living in Chicago in the 1920s in the U.S. And the amount of hoops you got to jump through to figure out how it all works.
And what that guy sounds like.
And what that guy sounds like is crazy, but he does such a good job of it. And he does such a good job of it that Martin Scorsese is an executive producer on Boardwalk Empire and directed the pilot for the show, and maybe a couple of more episodes throughout the series, that Marty Scorsese cast Stephen Graham in The Irishman in the only scene that I remember. Where he plays a fucking Italian guy. It's just like Martin Scorsese is like, I couldn't find an Italian American actor to do it better than this dude from England.
That's awesome. That's very cool.
Yeah,
Venom's gonna be sweet. One other thing about it, because we should, is I watched a trailer breakdown where Andy Serkis is talking about how his characters, for the purpose of this movie, are not aware of other Marvel characters. So, like, he's being very he's being very cagey about, like, multiverse or not. Basically because Sony doesn't know what Disney wants to do. So, like, they have to keep everything separate as much as they can. So, like, there are brief hints, but there'll probably be an Easter egg or an end credit thing until we get to whatever multiversal shenanigans. But as a result, the trailer has a wonderful shot. It's got a voiceover of Cletus Cassidy talking about, some serial killer bullshit. But he has a line about the people we leave behind crying out for a protector who never comes. And as he says, the protector who will never arrive, there's a shot of him writing letters in his jail cell, and he squishes a spider with his hand. And it's like this kind of fuck you of like, Spider-Man's not in this movie. don't even trip about it.
Yeah.
But also him writing letters in the jail cell has a very like Stan, for the Eminem Stan feel to it. Just that like kind of an obsessed fanboy thing. So, if we're lucky, and probably much to the chagrin of friend of the show, banned from the show, Orlando, Eminem may return for another theme song. We'll see.
A similarly incomprehensible theme song.
Yep.
Well, yeah, I think it'll be. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna watch it. Hopefully, it'll be able to capture the same bizarre tone of the first one. I do want to. Maybe this is kind of a weird thing to end on, but have you heard the Gina Carano news?
Oh God, no! I thought she just dropped off the face of the earth. Has she done her movie with Ben Shapiro yet?
No. Well, I don't know what the fuck she's up to. I think she was on television. I think she was on like fucking Bear Grylls show or something. I don't know. Recently, but the reason that she's in the news is because Disney Plus has released their For Your Consideration posters. And I think that this whole story is fascinating to me because I've not ever seen these. I don't know why they make them. and it's just a bizarre thing in general. This concept of for your consideration, and so
These are to like send to critics for award shows.
This is the sent to nominating committees for the Emmys. Yeah, so they are trying to. This is what they're trying to get nominated for Emmys, and it's just so funny to me. Maybe one of these has a shot, but I don't think so. So they're pushing for your consideration Falcon and the Winter Soldier for best drama.
It was fine, but
it's
I don't know about
it's
that.
not going to win anything. And ABC, like, they include like quotes from critics, and so on it's Peter Travers and
I mean, we love a Peter Travers quote.
yeah,
So.
and it's spectacular entertainment. Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan are two gifted actors who know how to ground characters in genuine emotion, and thanks to them and the commitment by Marvel to deepen characters for streaming without skimping on cinematic dazzle, I couldn't have liked it more.
Aw, Peter, he's great. He's just so happy all the time. Loves movies, loves TV. What a charmed life he lives, just enjoying things.
Although it does sound like they paid him for that. It's so
Well, you know, probably enjoys the money they paid him too.
he's laid it on thick.
Yeah.
But they notably did not include. They didn't shout anybody out for best actor or in the acting categories. Understandably, it's not. It's a very ensemble-y show.
Yeah.
So the other one that you know it would have a chance, except the Queen's Gambit came out, is WandaVision. They're putting it up for best limited series, which is not going to win.
No, Queen's Gambit's going to smoke them for sure.
Yeah, Queen's Gambit has won everything, and so this poster they didn't put any effort into it. It sucks. Like they put quotes from the Decider and the Guardian. Like they could have pulled something from the L.A. Times or the New York Times or something.
Could have found something.
But also doesn't seem like they're putting up anybody for the acting categories.
That's interesting because I wouldn't be surprised. Like, what about Catherine Hahn as Best Supporting Actress?
Yeah, I mean, these posters aren't the be all end all of this shit because there's like, you know, based on the Hollywood Foreign Press stuff that's happening right now, where people are returning their Golden Globes and shit like that, and all this corruption is coming out about inviting people to sets and taking them on, you know, resorts and putting
This was
them
that
on.
thing with what was it, Emily in Paris, the Netflix show where they like just flew people to Paris to like wine and dine them.
Yeah, wine and dine them, and then that got nominated, and you know they're able to put that in the promotional materials. You know, Golden Globe nominated, Emily in Paris, by all accounts, unwatchable show, and by all accounts I mean by my account where I couldn't watch it. But I do think my wife watched it in that way where you are mostly looking at your telephone.
Yep.
So, but the one that they're really pushing, it seems, is the Mandalorian, and so they have the for your consideration the Mandalorian poster, which calls out the actors that they want to see potentially put up for Emmys, and in lead actor Pedro Pascal.
That's a tough job. He's basically just doing voice work. That's an interesting.
Yeah, and
sometimes like awards people like that sort of thing.
Yeah,
you know, it's like the I was gonna say Jamie Foxx as Ray
Charles.
Thank you. I was gonna say Ray Lewis, and I knew that was not right. Though I would watch Jamie Foxx as Ray Lewis. I bet he'd make a great Ray Lewis.
He'd have to get much bigger.
Yeah. But yes, as Ray Charles, like well, you do something that's like
a transformation.
Requires you a transformational role. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it's a little bit different because a lot of people interpret it as a voiceover role. And
that's fair.
It is unclear how often he is in the suit. And apparently in the first season, he wasn't in the suit very much at all.
That's what I heard, that he fought or he lobbied to be in the suit more often in season 2. So
Yeah, I think he probably had to get in shape or something, or like be able to do more of the stunts before they trusted him with that. Because that also, the production on that show is also so expensive and so
well, yeah,
quick.
that suit's probably really expensive, and you have to get it right the first time. And what if he falls down and breaks something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a very funny story that Adam Pally, who's a comedian, tells on, I believe, Colbert, where he is one of the stormtroopers that kidnaps Grogu in season 1, and he has to punch Grogu, and apparently he punched him so hard that everybody flipped their shit because it's like
Break the puppet.
break the $1 billion puppet, like the most expensive thing on that set, including all the vehicles, everything, is that damn puppet. He punched the shit out of it, and apparently he tried to draw, he tried to make it a little more levity by saying like that Grogu said something anti-Semitic to him, but people were too.
That's not better.
People were too concerned about the well-being of the puppet. My question is, why would they actually even allow him the option to punch the damn thing? Don't have it in the scene when you're going to hit it.
Yeah, right. It's inside a bag. Put something else in the bag.
But in any case, yeah, so they're very precious about shit on that set. So for supporting actor, they're thinking Giancarlo Esposito and Tamora Morrison, which Tamora Morrison, I don't know that qualifies for supporting actor. He was only in 3
He's not
episodes.
in very much of the show. He's very good, though.
Yeah, but I would imagine you put him in guest actor, which they have like a list of 1 billion people in guest actor. But for supporting actress, this is what people are shouting out, is that Gina Carano is being put up in this for your consideration campaign.
God damn it. Fucking Disney can never just let it be. You know, they'll create some goodwill, and they'll always fall back on their money-grubbing fascist tendencies. Like, well, we did, and then they'll try to cloak it in. Well, she was good in the show, and we can separate the art from the trash person.
Well,
or you could just not put her up.
But that's what I was going to say, though, is that excuse would make a ton of sense to me if
she was good in the show.
She was good at anything. She's so bad in the fucking show, where it's like, man, you all dodged a bullet here by being able to fire this awful casting choice. Like, it was so terrible. Everything she said was wooden, bad, sounded fake, telegraphed. She was indicating the whole time. Her performance is abysmal. I don't know why anybody likes it. I never did. I was happy when she was a glorified guest star, and then they spun her out into this whole thing, and she was going to be Rogue whatever Squadron, this bullshit spin-off television show, which, by the way, Disney has greenlit like 1 billion and has only like produced 1. But it's like this fucking terrible actress. You're gonna put her up for supporting actress? It's almost like a troll.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Like, if there was some like, well, she's not a good person, but her work. If you were talking about like Woody Allen or something, like, those movies are good. It's a shame that he's really problematic, but she's not good.
No,
like, they were hoping for a Lucy Lawless style, like, big tough lady with a heart of gold or whatever, and Lucy Lawless has become a good actress, and she's charming, and Gina Carano is just not.
Yeah, she's terrible. She's terrible. Yeah, so that's what people were like. It's like speculating and shit. It's like if you log into our Twitter account ever, which I've been doing more frequently now. You see things from fans. Conspiracy theories, hopes, dreams, wishes. That this might signal that she's back for season 3, or
trying to rehabilitate her.
Yeah, there's also like so much stuff about Zack Snyder and the news that apparently Zack Snyder said. I don't know where he said it, probably on Vero, just 12 people, that Warner Brothers is not interested in pursuing his ideas for the sequels. to the Justice League
Yeah, well,
film.
Warner Brothers also said that. Like, we know.
Yeah, Warner Brothers said it. They said it to you. You said it. They said it, and we also agree with Warner Brothers. Your dumbass bullshit at the end of that fucking movie is not anything I want to see any more of.
Yeah, we're all on the same page that we don't need to see the Nightmare Batman. It's fine.
But it's like there's this massive thing of like being everybody tuning in as soon as Army of the Dead drops on Netflix to really juice that and show Warner Brothers that it's been. I mean, Warner Brothers has become the bad guys in this whole thing.
Yeah,
for
they really
dorks.
have.
For like 20 dorks.
Yeah, but 20 like really angry dorks with Twitter accounts.
Yeah.
And a lot of free time.
Oh man, it's so weird. And the Army of the Dead thing is also so weird. It's like not remotely related.
No, a different. Nobody cares. Like, wait, it's like trying to like, I'm gonna go out with my new girlfriend to show you what you're missing. Like, nobody gives a shit about that.
Yeah.
And like, Zack Snyder's doing just fine. He doesn't need your.
Oh, he's so rich. Yeah.
Yeah, he's fine. He'll be okay.
And the other thing that I saw it was funny that you mentioned Venom was that there was this whole thread about how people who are DC fan people lie all the time and juice Venom. This is when the trailer came out because they won't admit publicly that they like MCU movies. This is like fandom is fucking stupid.
To be like, well, Venom's not a Sony movie, so I'll juice the non-MCU. God, that's exhausting. It's so exhausting. Venom's just a good movie.
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, we talked about it. We're DC loyalists. We talk about how much we hate the MCU and the DCEU so much. We talk about it way more than we talk about how much we like either of them.
It's true. Well, I'll end on this. There's a casting announcement they cast somebody to play Guy Gardner. For the HBO series.
Wait, tell me who it is.
And it's some guy from American Horror Story. I've got no idea who he is. I've never seen him before in my life.
I gotta know.
But he's got a punchable face though, which is the prime, first characteristic you need in a Guy Gardner. He's not a redhead, but I guess they'll dye his hair. But he looks real smarmy, which is perfect. And the series is going to be like an anthology where it's going to bounce back and forth, I guess, between Alan Scott in the 1940s and Gardner in the 80s and some other lanterns, which could be sweet or it could be very confusing. That is a dense mythology that, of course, we're both very invested in. But I trust Berlanti and pretty much, unquestioningly now as a producer. So I expect it'll be fine. But I'm excited about it. I just hope that HBO Max survives long enough for them to actually make this damn show.
I don't trust that this show is going to be good. And I only say that because if I'm not mistaken, this is what the show that Jeff Johns has helped co-develop.
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what hands he has in this thing or has any more. I think he was trying to build this out, but he was very busy with Stargirl, which, to be fair, Stargirl is quite good.
Okay. Yeah, he's a producer on the show. Man, I mean, this casting on a superficial level looks bad.
Yeah. Agreed. I mean, we'll have to see him in costume and makeup, but it just looks like some dude.
Yeah, he's supposed to look... Honestly, he's supposed to look kind of ugly.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like, part of what makes Guy Gardner interesting is that he's got a lot of sort of projected confidence that has no basis in reality. Where, like, he swaggers a lot, but he's not actually very good looking. He's just, kind of a big lug. And I like that about him. It's an interesting characteristic. Like, if he is conventionally attractive, you sort of lose something in his kind of weaponizing his own anxieties as false confidence and bravado. So I hope this guy can bring that kind of like false confidence and bravado into the role. We'll see.
Wait, maybe it's a totally different thing, or maybe it's just IMDb has not updated at all. But the thing that I'm looking at is Green Lantern Corps, and Greg Berlanti has no association with this. So maybe this is a different project or dead project or something. But this is John Berg and Jeff Johns, who were both called out by Ray Fisher. Deborah Snyder and Kevin Turin are producing this version of Green Lantern Corps.
I don't think that's right.
But
I don't even know if it's called Green Lantern Corps. I think it's just called Green Lantern now.
Well, there's that's why I'm saying, because there's another project called Untitled Green Lantern series that IMDb does not have information about besides the preliminary cast, which I can't have access to because I don't have IMDb Pro.
Gross. That, I think, is the one that's actually moving forward, that Berlanti is producing, that they've cast this dude for, that they've got some initial details about. It's going to be in different time periods with Alan Scott. Because, of course, since it's a Berlanti production, they're really pushing Alan Scott, coming to terms with his own homosexuality in addition to coming to terms with having a magic ring.
Okay.
So,
I mean, I'll watch it.
It could be sweet.
I'll watch it for sure. I like HBO Max. I've been watching exclusively HBO Max. I haven't opened my Netflix app in 6 months.
Yeah, there's really, really good stuff on HBO Max.
Yeah, I've been watching exclusively HBO Max and Shudder. It sucks, though, because my wife and I are watching all different apps exclusively. So we can't cancel any of them.
You get your bases covered. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, so that'll do it for this episode of Is This Just Bad? Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Is This Just Bad. Email us at isthisjustbad@gmail.com. Follow the Cosmologist on Instagram at Sergeant Bucky Bear. That's SGT Bucky Bear. And follow Maul on Instagram at Mad Maul Cosplay. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Is this just bad? Bad?
It's like what pirates board your brain, robbing knowledge, no joking. Opening your mind with a crowbar till you're woken, hitting Hydra, hailing hairs, have for time for hella reasons. We're more than winter soldiers with the men for all seasons. Listen closely while we share our expertise in cosplay comics culture. Demons free tuition to the multiversity. Mouse is psycho teaching perfect balance when we snap infinite gems into your ears. Dust our shoulders when we speak. Purple man persuasive beat. We're Randy Savage Randalls with immortal technique.